Underneath a burial mound in China, there may be rivers. Not water rivers. Mercury rivers. A shining, toxic liquid metal poured into channels beneath the earth, flowing through a miniature version of an empire. For centuries, that sounded like mythology. A dead emperor, a hidden palace, a fake sky above him, and rivers of poison below. But modern scientists found something strange in the soil above Qin Shi Huang's unopened tomb. Mercury, not just a trace, unusually high levels, exactly where ancient records said his underground world should be. So the question is no longer just, did China's first emperor really build rivers of mercury? The bigger question is this: what kind of man tries to build an entire empire for himself after death? Over 2,000 years ago, ancient Chinese historians described something that still sounds impossible today. They wrote about the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the man who unified China and became its first emperor. But they did not describe it as a simple grave, not a coffin, not a stone chamber, not a vault full of treasure. They described it as an underground world. Think about that for a second. An entire world, hidden beneath the earth. According to ancient records, the ceiling of the tomb was designed to represent the heavens. Stars and constellations were mapped above the emperor, like a night sky that would never fade. The floor represented the land of China. Mountains, territories, and the shape of the empire were recreated underground. And running through that buried empire were rivers and seas, but not made of water, made of mercury, liquid metal, beautiful, poisonous, reflective, and deadly. If this were in a fantasy movie, you would probably call it incredible world building. A dead king lying beneath a fake sky, surrounded by rivers of silver poison. But this was not written for Hollywood. It was written as history, and that is what makes the story so strange. Because if the ancient account is even partly true, then Qin Shi Huang did not simply build a tomb. He built a version of China that could follow him into death. And the most frustrating part is this: the main tomb has never been opened. Not once. For more than 2,000 years, the central burial chamber of Qin Shi Huang has remained sealed. The burial mound still exists today in Shaanxi Province, China. From the outside, it looks like a large hill, quiet, green, almost ordinary, but beneath it may be one of the most important unopened archaeological sites on Earth. So why has no one opened it? The answer is not simple. There are serious concerns about preservation. When ancient tombs are opened too quickly, the air, humidity, and light can destroy fragile artifacts almost immediately. Paint can vanish, wood can collapse, organic materials can decay. Something that survived underground for 2,000 years can be ruined in a few minutes if the excavation is done wrong. There are also legal and cultural reasons. Chinese authorities have not approved excavating the central chamber, and honestly, it is not hard to understand why. This is the grave of the emperor who unified China, standardized an empire, and built the foundation of what would become the Great Wall of China. You do not just crack that open like a treasure chest. But here is the important part. Never opened does not mean never studied. And then, in 1974, a group of farmers digging a well accidentally made one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in human history. The Terracotta Army, more than 8,000 life-size clay soldiers, not found by a famous expedition, not found by a team searching for the emperor's lost army, but by local farmers digging a well. Imagine that. For over 2,000 years, thousands of soldiers stood underground in silence. Then one day, someone digging for water accidentally found an army. Each soldier had armor, weapons, ranks, facial details, different hairstyles, different expressions. It was not just a burial decoration. It was a military force made of clay, built to guard an emperor in the afterlife. So when ancient records say there may be something even stranger beneath the main tomb, we should not dismiss it too quickly. Because history has already shown us that this site can hide things on a scale that sounds unbelievable. And that brings us to the Mercury. This is where the story shifts from legend to something harder to ignore. Modern researchers have conducted geochemical surveys around the burial mound. They tested the soil above and around the suspected location of the main tomb chamber. And what they detected was unusual. Mercury concentrations were abnormally high, not randomly scattered. Not just a tiny background trace. The highest mercury readings appeared near the area where researchers believe the central tomb chamber is located. That does not prove there are literal rivers of liquid mercury flowing underground. No one has gone inside and taken a photograph of silver streams running through the darkness. No one has mapped the chamber from the inside. No one knows exactly what is down there, but the mercury signal matters. Because ancient historians specifically wrote that the tomb contained rivers and seas of mercury. And now, above the unopened tomb, modern science has found unusually high mercury levels. That does not give us a final answer, but it does make the ancient account much harder to ignore. And this is where the story becomes more interesting than a simple yes or no question, because the mercury itself may not even be the strangest part. The strangest part is what the mercury was supposed to represent. If the ancient record is right, Qin Shi Huang was not just hiding treasure underground. He was recreating his empire beneath the earth, a sky above him, a map below him, rivers and seas flowing through it, an army guarding him nearby. This was not just a burial. This was a political statement made in stone, clay, and poison. Even in death, the emperor wanted a world. Even underground, he wanted China. And mercury was the perfect material for that dream. Mercury is one of those substances that feels like it should not belong to the ancient world. It looks futuristic. It moves like water. It shines like a mirror. And it kills you quietly. Even today, mercury feels strange. It is a metal, but it flows. It is liquid, but it is heavy. It looks beautiful, but it is toxic. It reflects light, pools in low places, and seems almost alive when it moves. To people in the ancient world, mercury must have felt otherworldly, a substance caught between categories. Not quite solid, not quite water, natural but unnatural, beautiful but dangerous. And for Qin Shi Huang, that mattered. This was an emperor obsessed with power, permanence, and immortality. He wanted to rule forever. He searched for ways to extend his life. He was surrounded by ideas of eternal rule, cosmic order, and life after death. So imagine what mercury would have meant to someone like that. Regular water evaporates. It freezes. It becomes dirty. It disappears. But mercury stays. It does not behave like normal water. It does not rot like wood. It does not fade like paint. It sits there, shining and poisonous, as if it refuses to change. So if Qin Shi Huang wanted rivers that would last forever, mercury made a terrifying kind of sense. An underground map of China. Rivers that never dry up. Seas that never evaporate. A liquid metal empire built for a dead ruler who refused to let death end his authority. That is not random. That is intentional. That is not just decoration. That is a worldview. But this is where we need to be careful, because a lot of history content goes wrong at exactly this point. It takes a real clue and turns it into a fake certainty. It takes an ancient text, a scientific measurement, and a mystery, then pretends the case is already solved. I do not want to do that here. So let's be honest about what we actually know. The tomb is real. The burial mound is real. The terracotta army is real. The ancient written account about mercury rivers is real. The unusually high mercury readings around the tomb are real, but the leap from high mercury levels above a sealed tomb to actual flowing rivers of liquid metal is still a leap. We do not know the exact layout of the chamber. We do not know how much mercury is inside. We do not know whether it was placed in channels, pools, containers, or something else entirely. We do not know if it ever flowed in any meaningful way. And we do not know what has survived after more than 2,000 years underground. That uncertainty may feel unsatisfying. People want the clean answer. Yes, the rivers are real. Or no, the story was just a myth. But the truth is more haunting than that. Because the evidence does not let us completely dismiss the legend, and the sealed tomb does not let us fully confirm it. We are stuck in the space between myth and proof. And sometimes, that is the most fascinating place in history. Because the question is still alive. Somewhere beneath that mound, there may be nothing like the legend. Or there may be a chamber that changes how we understand ancient China forever. There may be collapsed structures. There may be preserved artifacts. There may be traps. There may be painted walls. There may be the remains of a cosmic ceiling, a map of the empire, and traces of mercury where the ancient rivers were supposed to run. Or there may be something no one has even imagined yet. That is the power of an unopened tomb. It keeps the past from becoming fully settled. It keeps one final door closed, and behind that door is not just the body of an emperor. It is the dream of a man who looked at death and tried to build a system around it. Qin Shi Huang did not think small. In life, he unified warring states into an empire. He standardized writing, currency, measurements, and law. He built systems that could outlive any single person. And in death, he seems to have wanted the same thing: order, power, protection, continuity. The Terracotta Army was not only about grief, it was about control. It was an emperor saying, even underground, I will not be alone. Even in death, I will be guarded. Even after my body is gone, my command will remain. And if the Mercury rivers are real, even partially, they tell us something even more extreme. They suggest he did not want a grave. He wanted a universe, a private empire beneath the earth, complete with soldiers, complete with rivers, complete with a mapped sky, complete with the illusion that his rule could continue forever. That is why this story is so powerful. Not because Mercury is strange, though it is. Not because the tomb is unopened, though that is incredible. But because the whole thing reveals something deeply human and deeply terrifying. The fear of death, the hunger for control, the fantasy that power can cross the boundary between life and whatever comes after it. Most people build monuments because they want to be remembered. Qin Shi Huang may have built an underground empire because he wanted to continue. And somewhere beneath a quiet hill in China, that sealed world may still be waiting. Not just a tomb, not just a myth, but a buried version of an empire. Toxic, brilliant, silent, and still beyond our reach. So did Qin Shi Huang really build rivers of Mercury underground? We do not know. Not yet. But the evidence makes it impossible to completely rule out. And maybe that is the most haunting answer of all. Because after more than 2,000 years, the emperor's final secret is still doing exactly what it was meant to do. It is still sealed. It is still protected. And we are still standing outside, wondering what kind of world he left beneath the earth. Should the tomb ever be opened? Or should some doors in history stay closed forever? I'll let you sit with that question for a second. Drop your answer below. Should we open the emperor's tomb or leave his sealed world untouched? I read all of them. And if you want more stories where ancient history and modern science collide, subscribe. This is the kind of mystery we dig into here.